Whoa. Whoa. Right. Tottenham.
Yeah.
And Man United, both in the Europa League on different sides of the draw. This is the part of the podcast we call Leaning on Jack. Because what we're going to do is we're going to run through the route. To be honest, you two can do this on your own if you want. We're running through the route to the final. Mr. Bowman, as a Spurs expert, can chip in along the way, and we can discuss Man United's route as well. Broadly speaking, it feels like Man United have got a tougher run, I would say. Jack, he's squinting.
I don't know. I think it's a really balanced draw.
Okay. One thing I noticed was it felt like every team's got two or three like sensational players. I've got a hot take on Real Madrid. On Man United. I don't even think it's actually even a hot take, but I'm going to save it to the end because I want people to continue to listen. So let's start off with who Tottenham have in this next round. It's AZ Alkmaar, who are known as the cheesemakers. You know that?
Yep.
Yeah, some of their fans wear cheese on their head.
Yeah, right. I see. I was having a few drinks on Friday night. Shout out to my mate Sean, who's in the country, and we're chatting to another friend whose parents originated from Alkmaar. So we sort of checked them out, and they're the cheesemakers. Anyway, that's boring. Round of 16. So currently fourth in Eredivisie. They're averaging 51.9% possession, sixth highest in the league. Scored 39 goals in 23 games so far this season, which is seventh in Eredivisie. They only conceded 21 goals, which is the second best defence in the league, which I think is the most prominent stat for me personally coming into this game, in terms of a game where they will naturally be probably the underdogs, but have got some firepower up top, which they've pinched from Tottenham Hotspur. Troy Parrott.
Troy the boy.
Troy Parrott, say it twice. Other nicknames available. He scored 17 goals this season. And yeah, he's flying. And we've been waiting for this with Troy.
Yeah.
We thought anyone who's followed my journey will know that he was a crucial part of one of the greatest moments of my life on Football Manager. Took us to the playoff final and further, actually won it. But yeah, in terms of real life, Ben.
Yeah.
He's gone to AZ Alkmaar, and does this panic you?
Yeah, a little bit. It certainly does. I mean, like we were sort of talking before we started about the fact that we've already played Alkmaar. We played them in the league phase. We beat them 1-0 at home. Parrott played in the game, wasn't too effective, but he's been banging the goals in. This has kind of been a long time coming, and I think that Spurs have had quite a few strikers come through the academy while Harry Kane was in the hogging the goals and hogging the kind of the limelight. We've had Dane Scarlett, who is now back at Spurs and actually providing a little bit of impact. Got an assist at the weekend, and Troy Parrott was with him kind of at a similar time. He was a little bit before Scarlett actually in that kind of journey in the under 18s and 21s. There was a moment where it was the 1920 season off the back of the Champions League final, last few months of Poch before Mourinho came in, where Parrott was banging in the goals in the UEFA Youth League.
Everyone was talking about him.
Yeah, and it was like we didn't have another striker. We didn't have Lucas Moura played up front when Kane wasn't there, and Kane was getting kind of regularly injured at that point actually. And when Mourinho came in, Mourinho actually there was so many calls for Parrott to play. He got a few opportunities, and then it kind of just never really worked for him after that. Had a few loans, and now he's found himself away. And I always love
lower league loan. I think he was
who was it?
MK Dons or something.
MK Dons. He did quite well.
He popped around the place for a while.
He really did, yeah. You thought it was going to be one of those stories where he's not really going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But then he went for good money.
It was about, in the summer, it was about 10, 15 million pounds. And it was like, I always like it when players kind of go abroad and test their kind of get outside of their comfort zones and go to a league where you're kind of, he's going to be assured of game time. And like he was on loan at Excelsior last season, where in a relegation battle he was kind of carrying them on his back a little bit.
Yeah, he was really good. And then obviously RZ decided they were going to take a gamble, which I thought was a bold move from them. Considering where they've been and who's been kind of banging in the goals for them, it felt like a big moment. It felt like a big moment for Troy because Arsenal are a big club, and it is one of those ones where I think often they get forgotten. And obviously it's the big three when you talk about Dutch football from a more kind of broad perspective. But there's a couple of sides.
Then?
They've been in that mix. I mean, they've been in that mix for quite some time now as well. I think is the interesting thing. So we've seen them knocking about in Europe for a number of seasons, and they have really kind of risen up the ranks. And it's taken they've had some very, very good managers at the club. They've had some very, very talented players at the club. And this feels again like a new kind of set of kind of players able to move them onwards, and they're a good side. They're a little bit inconsistent, but they knocked Ajax out of the Dutch Cup. They came with Becker earlier in the season. That they destroyed Galatasaray in the home leg.
So they've come through the playoffs, haven't they?
Oh yeah.
Just for anyone's not totally across that, and beat a Galatasaray side that I think I guess it was up for grabs. But this is the problem with the Europa League, is that you're going to have I'm going to use the word bigger team. But that doesn't guarantee anything, because the level is strong, if not spectacular.
Yeah,
and that's where Tottenham have got to be careful here throughout. I think more so. I think in terms of overall firepower and players coming back, Tottenham should be a really, really, really strong contender here, right?
Yeah,
with the home leg second as well.
Yes,
and with Ange's presser today before the City game, he basically said everybody's going to be back within the next week to 10 days.
Wow.
So Solanke, Van der Ven, Romero and Richarlison are all due to return, other than obviously Dragusin is long term, but the 4 players who are set to return this season are set to return within the next 10 days. And the first leg is next Thursday. So maybe whether he'll risk some of them. We've got
not.
Maybe not. We've got a game against Bournemouth on the Sunday, followed quickly by the second leg at home on the Thursday. So you'd imagine Romero and Van der Ven and Solanke will play a part in at least one of the 2 ties.
Because you've got to hope that they're match
fresh.
Fit. Yeah. There's fresh and there's
because we've seen it with Van der Ven and that didn't work.
Let's not get everyone injured again.
No, exactly.
We've done that.
Yeah.
So as we said, in terms of them being maybe the 4th team, currently level on points with Feyenoord, who are 3rd, as you say.
Feyenoord having a bad season, though.
A bad old season. 21 goals, so they don't concede too much. What should Spurs fans be aware of when it comes to this game if they are to navigate it? What threat does Isaac Alkmaar possess for you?
I mean, look, Parrott's having a really good season. A lot of those goals have come from the penalty spot, and look, I have a vested interest in him doing well as well, because I'm desperate for anyone who can score goals in the front of this Republic of Ireland team. So him doing well in the Netherlands is good for me, and I'm happy. But it's nice to see him find somewhere where he's settled. Sven Meinens, who plays in the 10 and scored an outrageous free kick against Galatasaray. If you haven't seen it, go and look it up. It's an absolute scorcher. Is a lovely player in there, just coming into the prime of his career, 24, 25. They have Ernest Poku, who came through the RZ Academy on the right wing, 21 years old, Dutch youth international, rapid, but also just really, really fun. And one of those players you see coming through, and to kind of look at the Dutch league as a whole, and actually kind of flying wingers who can torch fullbacks is a bit of a theme. We saw Johan Bakayoko coming through a few years ago, and really kind of putting the burners on, and now there's links to Newcastle, etc., etc. I think Poku will be on the radar of some big clubs before too long. He's a really, really good player. And in the middle, they have a Coat Miners. Not the Coat Miners, but his brother, Pierre Coat Miners, who is Tayan's little brother.
I was going to say, it's a common name. No,
and Geordie Classy, you might remember from his time at Southampton. Yeah.
I never knew.
So they have it's quite a well-set team. They've got quite an interesting thing going on in terms of their wingers are fun, their fullbacks get forward. Wolfer, a left-back, has popped up with a couple of really important goals this season. But I think that Minen's in the 10, having Parrott going over the top and then Poku stretching down that right wing feels like where the main kind of threat element comes from.
Okay.
And on front, they have this kind of set base of 2 defensive midfielders who they work in front of in Classy and Coat Miners. And they've done a really good job of just sort of allowing that front four to go and enjoy themselves a little bit more. So I think that they'll be playing with a fair amount of freedom. They're probably not going to qualify for the Champions League spots in the Eredivisie. They've got a cup semi-final this week, I think, against Heracles, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that, that offers a real opportunity to go and win silverware this season. But they will be looking at this Europa League. And look, they've had decent runs in both the Europa and the Conference Leagues in recent years. Mm-hmm. And they'll look at this as an opportunity to test themselves against a Spurs side that have obviously struggled this season, but will on paper still be favourites. I think that they would have looked at the Galatasaray game on the first leg and gone,
Give them a lot of
we
belief,
can
though.
win. Well, we can win at home. We can win at home well, and then we only need to go away and draw/lose singularly,
Yeah.
and then it's okay. And, the way that they kind of stepped on. Yes, Gala had a man sent off, but the way that RZ stepped on it and stepped on the neck after that had happened, I was really, really impressed with.
Okay, so we're living in a world where Tottenham make their way to the final. Okay, so we're just going to live in that space, Ben. You seem fine
I'd
with
love
that.
to. Yeah. Yes, please.
Tickets
Okay.
are booked.
Exactly. The tickets are booked.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So the next round, it would be Ajax or Frankfurt. Frankfurt, of course, winners of the competition quite recently, and Ajax, you might have heard of them. They're quite a big deal. One ripple effect I did wonder was I wonder if Lucas Moura doesn't score that goal, does that game come to be? Because I wonder what would have been different, if they'd got to the final, they're able to... Well, first of all, would Liverpool been able to deal with that Ajax team?
Yeah.
Would you consider that? Would you say that Ajax team was better than your team?
On the night, yeah, definitely. We had that team that started in the second leg. We had no Kane. We had no...
Right, yeah.
It was very, very injury-prone Victor Wanyama. Or not injury-prone. He was coming off a big injury the year before. Wanyama in midfield, who kind of turned into a bit of a beast in that kind of Champions League run, along with Moussa Sissoko, who I think, from what I remember, actually, it might have been the Man City game that he was at risk of missing with injury. He played in that second leg, I'm pretty sure, in Amsterdam. We had players like Eric Lamela. It was not Spurs at their best.
Up top.
Everything
It
felt
was a bit of a patchwork job.
Yeah.
Oh, it really was. Like, people kind of forget how much it fell apart for Spurs towards the end of that season. It was like our league form massively tailed off. We had so many injuries. Kane got injured in the first leg of the quarterfinal against Man City. It was so like un-Spurs. That's why it was so bizarre that we won, because it was like, this doesn't happen to us. Like half
Felt
a team
football godsy, didn't it?
It did a bit, and I think that kind of just ran out by the time we got to the final,
Yeah,
giving a
you used
penalty
up
away
that
like
choice.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, you use your third wish. So if you get to the quarterfinal, Frankfurt or Ajax, Frankfurt currently third in the Bundesliga, averaging 48.7% possession, 10th in the league for that metric. Scored 49 goals in 23 games, third best when it comes to scoring goals, and they've got the 6th best defence as well. Lost Marmoush, of course, to Manchester City in January, their top scorer. Eli Wahi signed as a replacement that many of you might be aware of. A really, really exciting goal scorer. But of course, to lose someone like Marmoush when he was, as you said earlier in the pod, as electric as he's been, is a bit of a problem.
They also brought in Michy Batshuayi.
Have they?
I don't know why, what, or how, but
I just feel like he's been
He's
like
still
stealing a living.
yeah.
like, for a
he's
long
only
time.
31. The batsman is still about.
That's crazy.
I remember I was in Qatar and Belgium played Canada, and the looks De Bruyne. I know that Belgium squad didn't get on very well, but the looks that De Bruyne gave Batshuayi in that game are just like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
Like, just help me.
Is this what are you doing?
Yeah. Or Ajax. So let's. I'll give you the stats on Ajax first. Let's in a sec. But Frankfurt. If Tottenham were to play Frankfurt, actually, do you know what? Let me do it, and then you pick who you think they might end up facing. Let's do it that way. So Ajax are first in the Eredivisie. Their average possession is 58.1%, very high, dominating that league. Scored 51 goals, second best in the league. Conceded just 18. I guess the question with all those stats there with Ajax is, how much do you translate Eredivisie dominance to being able to battle it out with, in Europe?
Well, I think for some years the Eredivisie has been seen as a bit of a light touch, but for the first time in ages, we've got two Eredivisie sides into the round of 16 in the Champions League, and two very impressive victories as well against Juventus and Milan, who, admittedly aren't at their pomp, but they're still two good wins and two very, very hard fought and dug out wins from those sides. And I think we're starting to see, and those are the two teams who are not currently top of the Eredivisie, right?
Yeah.
Ajax are. So you get to that point. What I would say about Ajax is that Francisco Farioli has done an unbelievable job in turning them around from where they were last year, because last year they were a complete and utter house fire. Like, everything that could go wrong was going wrong at Ajax. There were obviously riots in the stands. There were, all sorts of things were going off the pitch, but on pitch they couldn't stop conceding goals. And he's come in and made them the best defensive force in the league. And although it wasn't the cleanest start to the season, they've really felt like they've ground into their groove. You know, they know now that this defensive line is not giving up opportunities and looks on a regular basis. They have worked themselves out in terms of going forward and starting to get things in the right direction. So it's not perfect, and I don't think anyone's going to sit here and tell you this is an Ajax vintage, but it's much better than it was. A couple of weeks ago, I would have sat here and been like, there is absolutely no way that Eintracht Frankfurt lose that game.
Right.
I don't feel like that anymore. And I think it's going to be, I think it's probably maybe the most interesting tie of the lot in terms of actually where everyone's at this point in the Europa League. But Eintracht, I watched that game against Bayern at the weekend, and they were absolutely taken to the cleaners. Like, it was a demolition job. Jamal Musiala, dropped maybe one of the best individual performances I've ever seen. And look, anyone can get torched by a Musiala on his day, right? That's fine. But like the way that they have regressed a little bit, I think, and the way that we've seen them kind of step backwards from where they've been, it has been really difficult to watch at times. And I've been really frustrated with not being able to, to see them kick on. They have some really interesting players, this Frankfurt side. Oscar Højlund, Rasmus's brother, plays in the middle with Hugo Larsson. So it's an all Scandinavian midpoint, which is cool. But I think since losing Marmoush, they feel like they've lost their way a little bit. And I know that sounds like a really easy thing to say.
Lost their cheat code.
But they've lost the ability to just torch teams in transition. And when, you watched them earlier in the season against Bayern, where Marmoush scored 2 late goals. It was a really, really good game, good battle. And you compare it to this performance, and it's like that teams don't have the fear when they play Eintracht anymore, because they know they're not getting absolutely rinsed in those areas. And whilst I think you're right, and El Yawahi is a good player and has come in there, he's not got that kind of combination of silk and kind of killer instinct at the moment that Marmoush had, and that ability to break over the top. The combinations aren't there yet. There's a lot of question marks over exactly how this looks. And I feel like it's turned into, for Dino Topmola, one of those seasons where he can experiment a bit and potentially then build again next year. Yeah. I think selling your best player or at least your most effective player in the first half of the season in January probably says to the manager, okay, this isn't going to be a season for the ages. We're just going to have to take this. The money's there. Yeah. And that's where they're at.
Yeah, and the summer will go again.
So does this mean you're leaning towards Ajax?
I lean towards Ajax, but I think this is a really good 50-50 game where either could come up against. And I also think that actually, in terms of the way that the bracket is shaken out, if Spurs can get past RZ, which we've already seen this season, this is not as scary a fixture as it perhaps looked. I think actually, if you'd given Spurs in December Eintracht would have beaten them about 5-0.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't think that's the case, especially with Spurs going back into this season, players coming back. I actually think that this looks like quite a nice element for this side of things, in a way that I think we will actually get to with United. And it's a bit, the kind of quarters and the round of 16 and the quarters look doable, even for two teams that I think have flaws.
Right. Yeah. And with Ajax, there's a lot of names that people will be aware of, I think, but maybe not. You're not really certain. Well, you either know that their ceiling isn't outrageous, or it's yet to be proven. Brian Brobby, Chuba Akpom, Steven Berghuis, Jordan Henderson, Bertrand Traore, a lot of ex-Prem players here, Wout Weghorst, Davy Klaassen, Branko van den Boomen, good player. Lots of names we know. And a team that, as I said, right at the top of Eredivisie at the moment. Do you
really
think...
good young defensive line? That's what I would say. Like a lot of talent in there, a lot of really interesting players moving forward. Wrench has gone to Roma.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, Divine Wrench left for Roma in January. But yes, you're absolutely right. And Kaplan's in there as well, the Turkish lad who I quite like. There's a couple of really interesting players in this Ajax side, but they are still young and unproven. So I think that's a fair point.
So if they make it through that, then there's a few. We're going to talk about the kind of let's say the most likely club. But if you want to chuck someone else in there, you can. Options include Bodo Glimt, Olympiacos, Victoria Pilsen, or Lazio. Lazio, we're going to kind of touch on if that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's a relative. If Lazio don't make the semi-final, I'll be absolutely stunned given what's happened so far.
Yeah. So currently 5th in Serie A, averaging 55.3% possession, 6th best in the league. They've got third best goals in the league, 47 in 26 games. They've got the likes of Matteo Guendouzi and Tavares, who I think earlier in the year had the most assists in Europe at one point.
Yeah.
And so a little Arsenal link there, Ben, which I think Twitter will be ablaze.
Yep.
If there's a semi-final defeat.
I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that. What sort of... So we expect Lazio to get to the semi-finals?
I think so.
And how would Spurs cope, or would they be able to cope with this Lazio side? What do you think?
Well, Lazio won the league in the league stage, so that's something to kind of look at. They've been really good under Marco Baroni, actually, and I think a lot of people were a little bit confused as to where this Lazio side were going. They haven't had a great couple of weeks, let's be honest, and the firepower, which had kind of seen them through. They haven't been particularly brilliant defensively, but the firepower has really been seeing them through, and they've been outscoring teams in recent games. I think they play Inter tonight, actually, in the Coppa Italia as we record this, but. You kind of look at what they've put together from an attacking point of view, and it's been very impressive. Tati Castellanos, who came in from NYCFC after a year on loan in Spain, has been really, really good. Zaccagni has basically taken on from Hellas Verona a couple of years back as a youngster, has become club captain, got the number 10 shirt now. And look, you think of Lazio in the last decade, right? And we think of Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, we think of Ciro Immobile, we think of Luis Alberto. They've all gone. Everyone's gone. It's a completely new setup, and it feels fresher. It feels more exciting. Guendouzi's been really, really good in there, and so has Nico Ravella, who used to play for Juventus. Brought him in as a youngster, and he's really kind of thrived in the middle of the pitch. Gustav Isaksson is a Swedish winger who's capable of scoring absolute worldies, and has dropped a few of them in recent weeks. They've had a kind of interesting dynamic going on with Castellanos and Bouli Dia, who came in and has always kind of scored goals wherever he's gone, but never really taken that next step up. But he's having a decent season as well. And at the back, they have this kind of experience in Romagnoli and then Hila, which gives them a little bit of a base. But they haven't been great defensively. What they have been good at is grinding out results and beating teams by outscoring them and just finding a way late in games. And you can see that with the games against Napoli. You can see that in the big games in the league. They've often been the team that have stood in the way of the title race. And I think that's an interesting thing. We're not talking about Serie A title race now, but when you kind of look at what we've seen in Serie A this year, the thing that I think makes it the most exciting title race in Europe is that there is like a clutch of clubs outside of the top three who are going to have major say on the title race, which doesn't really feel the case in loads of different leagues, I don't think. And Lazio are kind of preeminent of those clubs and looking good for a Champions League spot. They've been very good.
Okay, so the big question, Jack, is this. Do you think Tottenham will make it to the final?
No.
No.
No, I don't.
Where do you think they will fall down?
I think this is it. I think, but again, this is one of those things where
not the answer. I thought.
No. Like I also, and I will freely put my hands up about this. Like I like it when Premier League clubs don't do well in Europe. Like it's one of those things. No, I can imagine. But I like it when they don't do well. I like it when, because all of the chat about Farmers League this and Farmers
Just a little slap in the face of that nonsense. Yeah.
So I would say the same. Like I think, and I know it's the easy thing to say because they came first and second in the league, but I would put my money on the final of the Europa League right now being Athletic Club against Lazio.
Yeah.
But I do think Spurs will make a semi-final, and I think that if they do get there at that point, then right now this Lazio side aren't in great nick. That they've had a couple of weird wobbly weeks, and if Spurs play them as they're like this with all these players coming back, then I think there's a fair shot of them getting through it. But I just feel like in 6 weeks' time, this Lazio team might have just rediscovered their groove a little bit, right?
We're like 3 months away from that possible scenario, aren't we? And we've seen with Tottenham what can change in that period of time. Like, obviously, I think
that's a big thing for you in the sense that there's a tipping point here, maybe, of what if you tip over into it's all about this competition, and that being too much. That's one problem. But if it's like that's the focus, and you've kind of come through such a tough spell, and now everyone's kind of fit, and you can manage it correctly, it could work in your favour.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are kind of debating at the moment. Well, obviously, we aren't going to achieve anything significant in the league this season. We're 12th. We're still kind of there's still a bit of a buffer between us getting back into the top half. It's not doable. I think there's an 11-point gap between Tottenham and the Champions League places at the moment, and that has been overturned before. But I think it's a lot of the fans' focus right now.
Just to be clear, before people go hammer you in the comments, he's not saying they're
that's
going to
happen.
The Champions League.
Oh yeah, we're definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Could
Europe itself.
Yeah, but it's. I think a lot of fans are kind of viewing it as like using the league to just build that momentum back up and have that belief. You can't just. It's a lot of this is kind of like focused on the Romero Van der Ven conversation, right, as well, because they're our best centre back partnership. Those are the players that we've been without the most over the course of the last 2 seasons, and a lot of people are kind of saying, well, do you just save them for the Europa League and almost just play Kevin Danso and Archie Gray in the league? It doesn't work like that. You can't just give those players those minutes in the league. You need to be able to use those league games to kind of build that momentum and confidence, because winning is a habit. Spurs have kind of turned a corner in the sense that we've won 3 league games in a row now. Not the most convincing performances in the world, but we found a way to do it. Now, when you think about the kind of level of opponent that we're going to be coming up against in the Europa League, like you said, I think the Ajax Frankfurt thing, obviously we've got to get past ours at Alkmaar first, but the Ajax Frankfurt thing might look scarier on paper than it actually is. And then you get to the semi-final against Lazio, where, like you said,
it's kind of a bit anyone's game at that point, right?
100%. And the thing is with Lazio, like you said, in terms of that ability to just find a way to win games, that's also a bit Spurs in kind of terms of having that sort of chaos factor and just being able to score goals and just find a way to get past teams. So I think, yeah, I mean, that Lazio is the one when you're looking at that side of the draw. And also Spurs get into a semi-final, you always just go into it with that kind of pretense of just like, you kind of buy into that self-fulfilling prophecy of just like, are we going to get over the line, rather than feeling super confident about doing it, because it's just not necessarily what we do. I'm kind of glad we're on this side of the draw compared to the others, because I think the other side, because the other semi-final prospect would have been one of Roma or Bilbao, and I think I think Bilbao.
Let's get into that then. So Man United's road to the final, and what I will say is when you look at the odds, Tottenham currently the favourites, Athletic Bilbao second favourites.
That does surprise me that Spurs were the favourites going into the competition. It does surprise me that
makes
still
sense. Yeah, then it made sense.
Yeah,
I think because the injuries are coming back, I think I think it would be fair to kind of keep you knocking up around there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I agree. But
Bilbao around it. I'm just not.
Maybe not right at the top of the
favourites,
tree. Yeah. So Bilbao, and with all the context you've just given, and Bilbao, Man United third favourites, which I mean that turns it into a little bit of a farce. Lazio. So in terms of that side, your side, you've then got Real Sociedad. So then and Eintracht Frankfurt. So the bulk of those favourites, if we're calling them that, are on the other side of the draw. Jack, what we're going to do here is we're going to live in a fantasy world where Man United make it to the Europa League final. Okay. So with that, you essentially will preview their opponents, and you will have to choose who will make it through. Okay.
But it has to be Man United.
Sorry, Man United have to. If Man United make it through. So round of 16, Real Sociedad currently. And that brings an end.
Yeah. That was good. Yeah.
Currently 8th in La Liga, averaging 55.8% possession, play with a 4-3-3, only 23 goals scored in 25 games, which is the 4th lowest in the league. Conceded 23 goals, which is the 4th best defence in the league. Man United faced Real Sociedad 6 times in their history, winning 3, drawing twice, and only losing once. We talk about star players. Martin Zubimendi is one that a lot of people will be aware of. Takafusa Kubo, who I really enjoy watching, and Oyarzabal, who's actually a lot younger than I thought. I just feel like he's
he's been around for so long as well.
Yeah. So how do Man United get past Real Sociedad?
They're having a really weird season, La Real. It's been a bit of an odd one in that they lost a lot of players in the summer and some kind of key spine players. So they lost Lenormand to Atletico Madrid, they lost Mikel Merino obviously to Arsenal, but also they let go just like the 3 strikers who'd scored the most goals for them last season. Andre Silva was there on loan, they lost Carlos Fernandes and Umar Sadiq as well, who moved off to Valencia, and they just haven't really replaced them. Ori Oscarson. Well, this is it. Ori Oscarson. Well, the thing is that none of them set the world on fire. Like basically, Real Sociedad had been looking for a striker replacement since Alex Isak left, which is ages ago, right? So, like, it hasn't really come through at this point. They brought Ori Oscarson, who is a young Scandinavian striker and who is going to be a star, I think, but is absolutely nowhere near it yet. And so I think that they've kind of given him the 9 shirt and they're giving him but it feels like a transitional season. You know, it's been interesting seeing what they've done. You know, Zubimendi looks like he might be off, obviously, in the summer as well. There was all those links to Liverpool last year. they brought in Naya Figuer to kind of replace the Normand, which hasn't hugely worked. And there's a lot of young players in this team who you're kind of like, okay, we're going to give this some time to breathe. There's a reason they've been inconsistent. Defensively, as you say, they've been pretty good. Alex Ramirez is a very, very good goalkeeper, and I think is one of the best keepers in Spain. But they've sort of just floated around with options. And what they've really missed, I think, from Marino's standpoint, is that ability, and we haven't seen it all that much in the Premier League, but the ability to win the ball and turn over quick in transition and get them moving up the pitch, which was such a kind of hallmark of the Alguacil sides. And he's worked without a striker before, but it just feels at the moment that Oyarzabal has not been quite on the same level of game. He's had some injuries as well. And then Takikubo's having a good season, but not an outstanding one. And Barnechea on the other side is a hard-working winger rather than someone who's kind of coming up with the goods week in, week out.
Do you... So just give me a simple prediction on this one. Do you think Man United will get through that first round?
Obviously, Donosti is quite a difficult place to go. But I have a funny feeling this could end sort of like 1-1 after 2 legs and end up going all the way to penalties.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's much between the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for me to say, La Real have not had a great season. They haven't, right? They've been kind of off the pace in terms of the European spots. But equally, nor of Man United.
Okay.
So it
goes to penalty. Anana does his business.
Yeah,
I don't mean shits himself.
I assume.
I mean, does well in said penalty shootout, and Man United sneak through. If they sneak through in the quarterfinal stage, they'll play FCSB, formerly Steaua Bucharest, or Lyon. Most likely Lyon.
Yeah, again, neither side. It's a bit like the kind of set quarterfinal that we were talking about with Spurs.
Yeah,
I think that's quite well balanced in terms of I don't think Lyon are particularly good this season, and FCSB having a great little run.
But they do. So Lyon, yeah, okay, but.
Look, I think whoever they come across there, they probably win that game. I think they're far more likely. They're far more likely to win the quarterfinal than they are to win the round of 16 game. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like it is one of those where I think that La Real have more players who can hurt Manchester United in the likes of like Bryce Mendes. If Luka Sucic is back, there's questions over whether he's going to be injured or not. There are players there that can hurt them. I can't see if they get to that quarterfinal. I think they beat whoever comes up against them there.
Right, okay. So you think... So Lyon, you'll know some of their names. Ryan Cherky, Malik Fofana is a really exciting player. Ernest Nuamar as well. Nemanja Matic could have an Old Trafford return.
Wow.
Lyon were good at the weekend against PSG and kind of put up a really good fight, but equally they just feel a little bit like everything that's going on there is just all over the place all of the time, chaos. But it is interesting to see, Tanner Tessman's in there now, the young USMNT international, sort of seeing him develop. Where we saw Thiago Almada join on loan in January as well. There's some really interesting players in there, but I just don't know if they have the consistency or the feel to really get things going at this point.
Okay. So all of a sudden, Man United have found themselves in a semi-final, which could be against Mourinho's Fenerbahce.
Oh,
come on. I mean, maybe not. Could be Rangers, could be Roma, could be Athletic.
Surely, I know Rangers keep turning it on for European nights, but but surely, not.
I think it's the end of the road for them.
It's
isn't
just
probably?
Like surely
You would imagine
someone.
So
put them out of their misery.
So who out of those guys do you think it's Bilbao?
I think it's Athletic Club, and also part of this is that the final is at San Mamés.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of a Team of Destiny vibe.
Oh, I think that's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
There's always the risk of proper,
it's another emotional pressure.
Well, I think the other thing that's really interesting, and I know we've put Manchester United through for this, but there is a possibility that this is Athletic Club against Real Sociedad in a Basque 2-leg derby to play at San Mamés in the Europa League final.
Are you listening?
Yeah, L.
Come on, bro. He's booked his. He's got his hotel as well. Yeah, exactly.
But I do think that Athletic, I mean, they won 7-1 at the weekend against, admittedly, a very poor Valladolid side. But there is a feeling, I think, that this might be Nico Williams' last season there. Right. Iñaki Williams is playing his heart out. Oyhan Sanset, who, for my money, is potentially, if you are looking at a player Manchester City, I know we did that earlier in the podcast, to come in and fill a role as an attacking number 8. Oyhan Sanset right there. Like an absolutely outstanding footballer. Ernesto Valverde, I think, is one of the best managers. Maybe maybe outside of Simone Inzaghi, we did this on Ranks last week, but maybe outside of Inzaghi, the most underrated manager in the game.
Yeah.
I think what Valverde has done with this Athletic side is remarkable. They're 6 points off the top of La Liga. They're in 4th. I don't think they're out of that race yet. I'll be honest with you. So they haven't lost a league game since something like October. They have been exceptional, and they feel really well balanced across the pitch. Roma have been really good in 2025. So that that round of 16 game looks very, very interesting. And yeah, I think they've picked up 20 out of 24 points in 2025 under Ranieri. They haven't lost a game yet. Like,
they were really exciting. Was it last night or on where Sula's a player that's kind of really coming into his own? It's just super exciting. And Dybala as well, kind of just taking that
quite, a bit more up and out, but quite individual, I think.
Yeah.
You got those players to do that, haven't you? With Roma. So Athletic...
I think it's Athletic or Roma.
If Athletic, let's say it's Athletic v Man United in that semi-final, that is where it ends. Surely, even in this hypothetical scenario,
I think so, yeah.
I do think, because I think they're.
To be honest, I think if they come up against Manchester,
I think they play with a bit more. They play with so much more thrust than some of these other teams, and I think that will make a big difference. And you add in the quality that they have as well.
And that's also what's hurt Manchester United so much in the league, when they kind of come up against teams that want to be more aggressive and kind of, they've got, Nico Williams, you can just see causing Mazraoui or Dello, who wants to play on that right hand side, so many problems. It's just like,
I don't want to make a huge downer of it, but I've got to sort of finish off the promise of what I said initially in terms of it is impossible for Man United to win this competition.
Yeah,
I am happy to say that. It is impossible. I was thinking to myself
that when Chelsea were in the Champions League.
But
Di Matteo.
It is utterly impossible.
Well.
Because I thought to myself, what? So answer this question for me, Ben. Who are the best 3 players that Man United have on their books?
Amad Diallo. No, it's Bruno Fernandes. Now you're really struggling for that third one, aren't you?
I've asked 3 people this, and they've done the exact same thing.
It's probably Kobe Mino, isn't it?
It's probably
Kobe Mino or Manuel Ugarte. I think Ugarte's a good player.
Yeah. Okay, and then, so those are the best. Who are the 3 most informed players?
For Manchester United?
Yeah. And you can't have Diallo because he's injured.
He's injured.
It's probably because he's injured.
It's probably, but again, it's Bruno. Again, he's kind of the over-reliance on him from a creative standpoint. Probably Joshua Zirkzee, maybe at a push. Everything about the fact that he's actually in that Tottenham game last week.
Harry Mags.
Yeah, probably Harry Maguire. Patrick Dorgu. I think Patrick Dorgu is one of those players that's he will get dragged down to the level of it. It always happens when Man United sign these new, young, exciting players where they immediately come in and look like the best player. And then
you're also looking for the best in them as well, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think he's been okay.
And also, I think there was in that Tottenham game last week, there were so many opportunities with Garnacho where he was down that left-hand side. Dorgu was there on the overlap every time. It was like I just didn't want to find him.
Yeah.
Garnacho, I think, is, in terms of form, just incredibly inconsistent. But again, I think it's hard with Garnacho because it's like, I think he's really
system as much as everything.
Yeah, and I also think, I don't think he's creative enough to play as one of those 2 10s. He's not tenacious defensively enough to play as one of the wing backs.
I don't know what Garnacho does. This is my hill I'm going to die on. I don't understand it.
We're going to have to do that.
He can't
You've got
shoot.
10 seconds.
He can't shoot. He's got the worst conversion rate of shot chances in the Premier League. He can't take players on. He's got the worst dribble success rate in the Premier League. Apart from running around a bit, I don't know what he does.
Yeah. This is why it's hard to judge Man United players, because when you look at Marcus Rashford, Antony, players that have kind of left and then just immediately in a new environment, it's kind of clicked somewhere else. That's not the only factor. But it kind of makes it hard to judge anybody.
But in this conversation, that's my point. Is that your best players, one of them's injured, of your 3, and of
for the season as well.
That 3, no one is in form. So the collective is just so
unless Bruno
poor.
Goes literal superhero. Yeah. There is no way that.
He had that moment against Rangers where he pulled up that when he did the rabbit from the hat.
Yeah,
and it was a great. I can't remember who played the ball into him, but it's like, how many of those moments have you got left against Bilbao
I
or
feel
Roma?
sorry for him, man.
Yeah, I do.
So there we go. If Tottenham make it to the final and so do Man United, does this become El Sacico? I'll leave that for you lot to answer.
They're in a final. You're right.
Sorry, it was written down. I've read it out. Let us know in the comments down below your predictions on the Europa League, which you can do on Spotify. We've got the comments available now. I'm enjoying reading them, so please do. I check them every single week. And make sure you follow this podcast. Make sure you check out the lads' stuff. Links are in the description for both. We will be back later this week with a podcast revealing the best player in each zone of the football pitch. That's right. Make sure you keep it locked on The Ripple Effect. Thanks for listening.